Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. So unfortunately, last week, Charlie Kirk was viciously assassinated, or you could just simply say murdered. I said then, and I reiterate today, his murder was absolutely senseless. It was sinful, and it was satanic. I still stand by those words, full stop, because it's unfathomable to me that anyone should be removed from this planet and murdered for what they believe or say, no matter how offensive or how hateful those words are. As a committed Christ follower, murder is the shedding of innocent blood of someone who is made in God's image. In fact, the Bible says it is one of the 7 sins that God hates, and so do I. Hey, family. Do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African-American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zone calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful together. Now add that to the fact that Charlie was brutally murdered in front of a huge crowd of people and reportedly in front of his wife and children. Every time I think about the fact that that young man is no longer on the planet, I'm repulsed by that idea, simply because of what he said and believed. Now, admittedly, I disagreed strongly with Charlie about statements he made regarding race, and his words were often hurtful and harmful to the Black community. And I condemned them then, and I still condemn them now. But he had the right to make them. He had the right to say it. He had the right to believe that. Therefore, he still shouldn't have been murdered for what he said and believed. What that young man should have done was showed up at the microphone on that campus and debated Charlie. But we know what happened. And so the prosecutor has charged 22-year-old Tyler Robinson with aggravated murder, and they announced that they will be seeking the death penalty. This killing shocked the country, but almost immediately the focus shifted to another crisis, and that is a free speech crisis. Jimmy Kimmel spoke about Kirk's murder on his show. You could say he mocked political reactions and he made certain suggestions. And I won't go into what he said, but not long after what he said began to spread, ABC then suspended Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely. And affiliates like Nexstar and Sinclair pulled their programming. Crowds were even turned away from his show before taping. Now, at this point, Kimmel has not commented. Now, personally, I thought his comments were unwise because they added pain to a fresh wound. But he had every right to say them. That's the point. That's free speech. And the bigger concern now regarding Kimmel is what happened after he said what he said. Brendan Carr, the FCC chair, on a MAGA podcast, he condemned Kimmel's remarks and raised the possibility of regulatory consequences. And of course, the affiliates and ABC executives got the message. Now, on the other hand, civil liberties groups like the ACLU warned that this was government coercion by using the power to license or not to license to silence speech. If regulators threaten your license while you're up for renewal or you're trying to work out some deal, is your decision truly voluntary? That's why this doesn't feel like democracy. It feels like authoritarianism. Because authoritarian regimes always begin by trying to control speech. There's a playbook here. And so what they will do is silence comedians, then activists, then citizens, lawyers, law firms, universities. If you only defend speech you like, you're not defending speech at all. And that's why so many Americans see a very dangerous pattern emerging here from MAGA. And what's so ironic is MAGA, during the Biden administration, made such a fuss over free speech. Back when big tech companies were silencing their speech, they raised a hissy fit. Right? You remember that? You recall that? But now they're doing the very same thing. I guess there are no absolutes anymore. It all depends on who's in power. So let's look at the foundation of this entire debate, this free speech debate, by looking at the First Amendment. All right, let's go to another screen. So let's read the First Amendment. Here's what it says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. All right, so Congress cannot essentially create some national religion, nor can Congress stop the free exercise of one's religion so long as one's religion does not violate criminal laws. Then it goes on to say, or abridging the freedom of speech. So Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. And that has been interpreted to mean that the government should not abridge speech, not just Congress, but also the executive branch. And that's what it feels like coming from the Trump administration right now. And then it goes on to say, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. Now, let me stop there a minute, because Todd Blanche, who is the second person in charge of DOJ, on CNN recently said that hecklers who showed up at a restaurant that the president was dining at, and they began to protest in that restaurant, saying things that he found offensive, he said that they could potentially use the RICO statute against those hecklers, those protesters. Wow. I mean, typically RICO is used for heavy-duty criminals, not against free speech. Now, one of the things the government will have to prove if they chase that rabbit is they would have to prove that there was some racketeering going on in order for RICO to apply. They would also have to show that there is or was some sort of conspiracy involved in the racketeering. That seems like a stretch to me. It seems like a stretch to me. And I think it would seem like a stretch to any grand jury hearing the matter. So we should not be threatened with RICO just because we're protesting and disagree with and dislike policies of the Trump administration. That is abridging free speech. Now, this does say abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, watch this, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. And I want you to underscore the word peaceably. So yes, our protests should be peaceable. There should be no looting. There should be no crime. There should be no rioting. There should be no burning down buildings. And I'm going to tell you something. We have represented pro bono protesters back during the George Floyd protests. And we saw law enforcement can lie basically and say that peaceable protesters were rioting so that those people can be charged. We took on a number of cases pro bono back during then and proved that our clients were not rioting. It is not rioting to just peaceably protest or march. Now, you know, the authorities have the right to regulate the time, to regulate the place, the manner in which the protest occurs, and you have to follow those laws. But if you're in compliance with those laws and you're doing it peaceable, you're not throwing rocks and bricks and you're not doing anything to hurt anyone, you're just exercising your free speech right to do just what the First Amendment says, to peaceably assemble, to express your freedom of speech, then you can do so. Just don't cross the line. Don't get violent. Do it peaceably. And of course, don't get involved in any kind of racketeering, right? Any kind of racketeering whatsoever. And then you should be fine with regard to threats of RICO. And I'm telling you this because you shouldn't be afraid to be out there, to in this country, to assemble, to protest, to march, to say what you feel and think. That is not against the law. That's protected. Now, not all speech is protected. Okay? Not all speech is protected. So the First Amendment does not protect certain kinds of speech. So don't think you can say and do in and everything and you have First Amendment protections. All right? That's not what I'm saying. For example, inciting unlawful behavior, that's not protected speech. Obscenity and lewdness, that's not protected speech. Fighting words, that's not protected speech. Defamation, that's not protected speech. True threats, that's not protected speech. So you can't say or defend your speech with the First Amendment if any of these things are involved. But other than that, you have a First Amendment right to do all that we just read. Okay? Again, to exercise your religion, to your freedom of speech, to assemble peaceably, that is to march, to protest, to form a crowd peaceably, and to petition the government. Those things are protected by the First Amendment. Now, I want to show you something from Project 2025 that the chair of the FCC wrote in Project 2025. He wrote the chapter on the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. He wrote the chapter for that for Project 2025. And listen at what he said in the opening. This is the opening paragraph, the mission statement. He wrote, the FCC should promote freedom of speech. How ironic. He opens up Project 2025 by saying that the FCC, which he chairs, should promote freedom of speech, and yet he reportedly, in fact, it wasn't just reported, we heard him, he was on that podcast, basically issuing a threat that we can do this the hard way or the easy way, he said. But you, in other words, got to come in compliance. So, how ironic, how hypocritical, in fact. And then he goes on to say, down at the bottom, growth reforms that support a diversity of viewpoints. Really? Really? Because Jimmy Kimmel expressed his view, which was diverse from MAGA's view, and he got canceled because of pressure from the FCC, an agency of the federal government. So what happened to Kimmel's free speech rights? Well, MAGA would argue that his employer decided to cancel him indefinitely. That's not abridging his free speech. That is a business, a corporation, deciding what to do with their employee who, I guess, violated some employment policy. Yeah, but it was at the behest of the chair of the FCC, as affiliates of Kimmel's employer need approval from that very same chairperson. So it was not just a simple business decision. Look, all I'm saying is free speech means free speech. Charlie Kirk had the right to say and believe and feel what he said. And there, oh my God, he should not have been murdered for that. Similarly, Jimmy Kimmel had the right to say what he said, and he should not have been canceled for that. That is the whole purpose of the First Amendment. Now, Kimmel can't argue that he was terminated because, and use the First Amendment to say his private employer violated his First Amendment rights because the First Amendment does not apply against a private employer. It has to be the federal government or state government. But he should not have been fired for that. I thought it was unwise. I thought it was tasteless. We're only a week out from Charlie's murder. Obviously, there are some hurt feelings. People still grieving, still mourning, his family, his wife. I get it. Even when I think about Charlie not being on the planet for what he said, that's unfathomable in my mind. I'll be honest with you. As strongly as I disagree with this guy on racial issues. But Kimmel should not have been fired for the things he said. And by that I mean, of course, because of pressure from the government. I'm sure when he began to work for them, they signed agreements, and there were probably clauses in that agreement that prohibited Kimmel from saying certain things at certain times. I presume that's a part of his employment contract. So that would have been just, the marketplace doing marketplace things. But when the government, when the chair gets on a national podcast and say what Brendan Carr said, that's a whole different ballgame right there. And again, that's the kind of stuff that really concerns millions and millions of people in this country. Because where's that going? What does that slippery slope look like? There are reports now that people affiliated with MAGA are buying up all kinds of media outlets. That's the marketplace. But it also just looks like it has the appearance of authoritarianism. People close to the president gobbling up media outlets. Because let me say that when there is no freedom of speech, there is no democracy. And for you folks who say, well, this is a republic, a democratic republic. All right, same thing. If there is no freedom of speech, there is no republic. And that's coming directly from the framers. That's how concerned they were of creating a government as powerful as the one they were escaping that could control speech. That's not American. All right. I'm Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video. And remember, always stay woke.